The chains were too tight. They always were. Kes had stopped pulling against them months ago, or was it years? Time blurred when your world shrunk to 4 stone walls, and a grated floor sticky with waste. The cell stank of decay and fear, mostly her own, though other scents drifted through sometimes. Burned metal. Cleaning solution. Blood. She pressed her back against the cold wall and listened. Footsteps above. Heavy ones. The guards were changing shifts, which meant the evening feeding. Not that they fed her much anymore. A thin gruel that tasted like rust, shoved through the slot twice a day if she was lucky. Once, when she first arrived, she'd tried to speak to them. Tried to explain the mistake. They'd turn the hoses on her instead, the water pressure so fierce it split her lip, and left her gasping against the far wall. Monster, they called her. Zalketh. In their language it meant corruption given form. She'd learned that from the whispers that echoed down from the guard stations. They thought she couldn't understand. They were wrong about that, like they were wrong about everything else. The slot opened. A metal tray scraped across stone. Kes didn't move. Sometimes they waited, watching through the viewing panel, hoping she'd lunge like the beast they believed her to be. She'd learn stillness instead. Learn to breathe slowly, to keep her hands visible, to make herself smaller than she was. It didn't matter. They saw what they wanted to see. The viewing panel clicked shut. Only then did she crawl forward, her movements careful despite the hunger gnawing at her stomach. The bowl contained the usual gray slop, but today there was something else. A piece of bread, hard as stone, but bread nonetheless. Her throat tightened. Someone had shown mercy. Dangerous mercy. Mercy that would get them punished if discovered. She ate quickly, choking down the bread even as it scraped her throat raw. Above her, voices rose in argument. She caught fragments through the ventilation grates. Protocol demands. Queen's orders are absolute. Seeing what it did to the others. Kes froze, bread halfway to her mouth. The Queen. They rarely spoke of her directly, as if her title alone commanded such reverence that to name her casually would be blasphemy. But something had changed. She could hear it in the urgency threading through their normally flat tones. Hours passed. The lights dimmed to their nighttime setting, a sickly orange glow that barely penetrated her cell. Kes curled against the wall, pulling her tattered clothing tighter. The temperature always dropped at night, and the chains prevented her from generating much warmth through movement. She'd learned to enter a meditative state, slowing her metabolism, making each breath count. The sound of multiple footsteps jerked her back to alertness. Not the guard's usual patrol rhythm. These were purposeful, accompanied by the clink of different armor. Officer class. Her pulse quickened. The door mechanism engaged with a grinding where she felt in her bones. Light flooded in, blinding after so long in dimness. Kes raised one shackled hand to shield her eyes, squinting through her fingers at the figures silhouetted in the doorway. 3 guards, fully armored, weapons drawn. And, between them, something impossible. A human. Kes had seen their kind before, in the brief window between her arrival and her imprisonment. Soft creatures by galactic standards, their bodies weak, their lifespans short. This one was male, dressed in clothing that marked him as some kind of specialist, medical, perhaps, or scientific. He carried a portable scanner, and a metal case that hummed with active refrigeration. Jesus Christ! The human breathed, his scanner forgotten in one hand as he stared at her. How long has she been like this? The lead guard's translator crackled. The specimen has been contained for 8 cycles. Standard protocol for Zalketh classification. She's not a specimen. She's a person. The human's voice carried an edge Kes hadn't expected. And she's suffering from severe malnutrition, possible infection, and He took a step forward. The guard's weapons rose instantly. I need to examine her. Protocol forbids direct contact. Then, your protocol is going to kill her. The human turned to face the lead guard fully. I was brought here to assess biological compatibility for the Queen's upcoming negotiations. That includes evaluating the treatment of detained persons. Unless you want me to report that your facility is torturing prisoners, you'll let me do my job. The silence stretched so thin Kes thought it might shatter. Then, the lead guard's weapon lowered fractionally. 5 minutes. Maintain minimum distance. Any aggressive movement will be met with immediate termination. The human nodded and approached slowly, his movements deliberate and unthreatening. He knelt just outside the reach of her chains, setting his case down carefully. Up close, she could see the exhaustion around his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands that spoke of long hours and stress. My name is Dr. Marcus Webb, he said softly, speaking directly to her for the first time. I'm going to help you. Do you understand? Kes stared at him, this strange soft creature who looked at her and saw someone worth speaking to. Her voice cracked from disuse when she finally answered. Why? The single word seemed to hit him like a physical blow. His expression shifted through surprise, compassion, and then something harder. Something determined. He glanced back at the guards, then returned his attention to her. Because it's right, he said. And because I think someone very important is about to learn something she should have known a long time ago. Marcus opened his case and began pulling out medical supplies, his movements quick and efficient. The guards watched with visible suspicion, but they didn't interfere. Not yet. Kes felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest, something she'd buried so deep she'd thought it dead. Hope. It terrified her more than the chains ever had. Marcus worked quickly, running scans that painted her condition in harsh data streams she could see reflected in his device's screen. His frown deepened with each reading. Behind him, the guards shifted restlessly, their weapons never quite lowering. The one who'd spoken before, the lead guard, judging by the extra markings on his armor, stepped closer. Time limit approaching, human. Then extend it. Marcus didn't look up from his scanner. Unless you want to explain to your queen why you let a potentially crucial diplomatic contact die from neglect. The guard's posture stiffened, but he made no move to interfere. Kes watched this exchange with growing confusion. What negotiations? What made her crucial? She was nothing, had been nothing for so long she'd almost forgotten there had ever been anything else. Can you sit up straighter? Marcus asked, his tone gentle. I need to check your respiratory function. Kes shifted, the chains rattling. The sound made Marcus's jaw clench, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. He pulled a small light from his case and leaned closer, careful to stay just beyond the chain's reach as the guards had mandated. Look at me! Good. Now follow the light with your eyes only. She obeyed, tracking the small beam as he moved it in a precise pattern. His face remained professional, but she saw the anger building behind his eyes. Not at her. For her. The distinction made her throat tight. Severe malnourishment, Marcus said, loud enough for the guards to hear. Muscle atrophy. Signs of prolonged stress response. Dehydration despite the supposed twice-daily water ration. He turned to face the lead guard. Is this standard treatment for all prisoners? Zalketh protocols are designed for maximum security. These aren't security measures. This is systematic abuse. Marcus stood, and despite being smaller than any of the guards, something in his posture made them step back. I'm documenting everything. Every injury, every deprivation, every violation of sapient rights under the Galactic Convention. The creature is not, she speaks. Marcus's voice cut across the guard's objection like a blade. She understands. She follows instructions and responds to questions. Under convention law, that makes her a person, not a creature. And persons have rights, even when imprisoned. The guard's weapon rose again, not quite aimed but no longer at rest. You exceed your authority, human. And you're about to exceed yours if you threaten a queen's appointed consultant. Marcus held his ground. I want this prisoner transferred to medical facilities immediately. I want a full review of her case. And I want to know who classified her as Zalketh and why. The standoff held for 3 heartbeats. 4. Then a new voice spoke from the doorway, cold and precise. Stand down. All 3 guards snapped to attention so fast their armor sang. Kes tried to see past them, but their bodies blocked her view. The voice continued, closer now, accompanied by footsteps that carried absolute authority. The human is correct. This situation requires immediate review. A pause. Clear the cell. All personnel except Dr. Webb will wait outside. Your Majesty, security protocols. Did I stutter, Commander? The guards filed out with military precision, though Kes saw the lead one, the commander, hesitate at the threshold. Then he, too, was gone, and the queen stepped into view. She was tall, even by her species standards, with the bearing of someone who'd never questioned her right to command. Her ceremonial armor gleamed even in the cell's poor lighting, marked with symbols Kes recognized as high court designations. But it was her eyes that caught Kes's attention, sharp, calculating, and currently fixed on Marcus with an expression somewhere between curiosity and challenge. Dr. Webb, your reputation for directness was not exaggerated. Marcus inclined his head, respectful but not subservient. Your Majesty, I apologize if I overstepped, but the situation demanded immediate intervention. Demanded? The Queen tested the word as if it were foreign. You are aware that no one demands anything in my presence. With respect, Your Majesty, basic medical ethics don't recognize royal privilege. Marcus gestured toward Kes. This woman is dying. Slowly, painfully, and completely unnecessarily. If that doesn't demand intervention, I don't know what does. The Queen's gaze shifted to Kes for the first time. Kes fought the urge to shrink back, to make herself smaller. Instead, she lifted her chin and met that calculating stare directly. Let her see. Let her judge. Kes was too tired to care anymore. Tell me, Doctor, the Queen said slowly, still watching Kes. What do you see when you look at her? Someone who's been treated like an animal when she's clearly not one. And if I told you she murdered 6 of my people? That she tore them apart with her bare hands and showed no remorse? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, I'd ask if anyone investigated why. If anyone tried to communicate with her. If anyone considered that maybe, just maybe, there was context you weren't aware of. Context. The Queen stepped closer to Kes, close enough that Kes could smell the ceremonial oils on her armor. Very well. Speak, prisoner. Provide your context. Kes's voice cracked again when she answered. They attacked my ship. Killed my crew. I was defending myself when your soldiers arrived. They assumed I was the aggressor. She paused, gathering strength. No one asked. No one listened. They just decided what I was. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush stone. The Queen studied Kes with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Then, without warning, the Queen knelt. The movement was so unexpected that Marcus actually started forward before catching himself. Show me your hands, the Queen commanded. Kes raised her shackled wrists. The Queen examined them, noting the raw skin where the metal had worn away flesh, the slight tremor from prolonged restraint. Her expression remained unreadable. Dr. Webb, your professional opinion. Is this woman dangerous? Everyone's dangerous under the right circumstances, Your Majesty. But is she a threat right now? No. She's barely able to stand. That was not what I asked. Marcus hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I think she's someone who fought back when cornered. Whether that makes her dangerous depends entirely on whether you plan to corner her again. The Queen stood abruptly. Commander, she called toward the door. Bring me the incident reports. All of them. And summon Administrator Vex to the throne room immediately. The door opened partially, the commander's voice filtering through. Your Majesty, if I may suggest, you may not. Do as I command. The door closed again. The Queen turned back to Marcus and Kess, her expression still unreadable, but something shifting behind her eyes. Recognition, perhaps. Or regret. Dr. Webb, you will transfer the prisoner to medical facilities under your direct supervision. I want hourly reports on her condition. And you, she looked at Kess, will receive proper care while I investigate these allegations. If what you say is true, someone will answer for this failure of justice. And if I'm lying? Kess asked, the words escaping before she could stop them. The Queen's smile was cold enough to freeze atmosphere. Then you will discover why my people call me the Iron Judge. But somehow, Dr. Webb's assessment suggests that scenario is unlikely. She moved toward the door, then paused. One question, prisoner. What is your name? Kess. Just Kess. Kess. The Queen tested it like she'd tested the word demanded earlier. I will remember that. As I will remember every day you spent in this cell, if my investigation confirms what I'm beginning to suspect. She left, her footsteps fading into the distance. Marcus let out a breath he'd apparently been holding and turned to Kess with something approaching a smile. Well, that could have gone worse. Could it have? Kess asked, bewildered. She could have had me shot for insubordination. Instead, she's investigating. That's actually a pretty good outcome. He began gathering his equipment. Medical team will be here soon to transfer you properly. In the meantime, let me at least get some fluids into you. Your electrolyte balance is catastrophic. He produced a small injector from his case, showing it to her before approaching. This is going to help stabilize you. It'll sting going in, but you should feel clearer within a few minutes. May I? Kess extended her arm, still processing everything that had happened. The injector hissed against her skin, and Marcus was right. It did sting. But within seconds, she felt something shifting, her thoughts sharpening at the edges. Why did you do this? She asked. You don't know me. For all you know, I really did kill those people in cold blood. Marcus packed his equipment methodically before answering. I'm human, Kess. We've got a long, ugly history of deciding someone was a monster first and asking questions never. It's not a mistake I'm willing to repeat. He met her eyes. Besides, I've seen real monsters. They don't look at you the way you looked at that piece of bread earlier. Like it was a gift you didn't deserve. The medical team arrived before Kess could respond, bringing with them a hover stretcher and proper restraints, the kind meant for patient safety rather than punishment. They were efficient, but notably gentler than the guards had ever been, responding to Marcus's terse instructions with professional courtesy. As they transferred her, Kess caught sight of the commander watching from the corridor, his expression unreadable behind his helmet. But his posture spoke volumes. This wasn't over. Someone had classified her as Zalkath, had authorized her treatment, had built her cage. That person wouldn't appreciate the Queen's sudden interest in justice. The medical facility was overwhelming after months in near darkness. White walls, bright lights, the constant hum of equipment and voices. They installed her in a private room with actual windows, though she noted the reinforced glass and the guards stationed outside. Not a prisoner anymore, perhaps, but not exactly free either. Marcus worked alongside the medical staff, directing treatment with the same quiet authority he'd shown in the cell. Fluid drips, nutrient supplements, scans that painted her internal damage in uncomfortable detail. Through it all, he kept up a steady stream of explanation, never touching her without warning, never moving too quickly. "You're going to feel worse before you feel better," he said, adjusting one of the drip rates. "Your body's been in crisis mode so long it doesn't remember how to process proper nutrition. We're starting slow, but even that might make you nauseous. I don't understand." Kes watched the clear fluid dripping into her arm. "Why does the Queen care? Why do you?" "Can't speak for the Queen," Marcus admitted. "But I care because I spent my whole life studying xenobiology, learning to see the person behind the alien features. And because my daughter's about your age." His expression clouded briefly. "She's back on Earth, thinks her dad's off doing important work. I'd like to actually live up to that belief." Before Kes could respond, the door slid open with enough force to make everyone turn. A figure swept in, all flowing robes, and barely contained fury. Administrator Vex, Kes presumed, based on the way Marcus's spine straightened, and the medical staff suddenly found reasons to be busy with their equipment. "Dr. Webb," Vex's voice dripped with false courtesy, "I understand you've made some serious accusations regarding facility protocols." "I documented serious violations of sapient rights," Marcus corrected. "The accusations came from the evidence. Evidence you gathered during an unauthorized examination of a Zalketh classification prisoner." Vex moved closer, and Kes saw the predatory calculation in his movements. "Did you consider that the prisoner might have manipulated you? Used your human sentimentality against you? Did you consider getting actual evidence before imprisoning someone for 8 months?" Marcus's tone stayed level, but Kes heard the steel underneath. "Because I've reviewed the incident reports now, and they're suspiciously thin on actual facts. The facts are that 6 people died after her ship was fired upon without warning, after her crew was killed, after she'd sent 14 distress signals that mysteriously received no response." Marcus pulled up a data pad, reading from it. "All of which is documented in the sensor logs you conveniently omitted from your classification report." Vex's expression flickered. "Those logs were deemed irrelevant to the threat assessment, or damning to your narrative." The Queen's voice cut through the room like a blade through water. Everyone snapped to attention except Marcus, who simply nodded respectfully. The Queen entered with the commander at her side, her presence somehow making the medical room feel cramped despite its size. She moved directly to Vex, her eyes cold. "Administrator, I've spent the last 2 hours reviewing your case files. All of them. Would you care to explain why 7 of the 12 prisoners classified as Zalketh under your administration were later found to be falsely detained?" Vex's composure cracked at the edges. "Your Majesty, the classification system is complex, and, in the interest of public safety, in the interest of what, exactly?" The Queen's voice dropped to something more dangerous than a shout. "Personal advancement? Because I've also discovered that you receive commendations for each Zalketh classification. Commendations that led to your current position." The room held its breath. Kes watched this unfold with a strange detachment, as if it were happening to someone else. 8 months of hell reduced to a career move. Lives destroyed for someone's resume. "Strip his credentials," the Queen said to the commander. "Full investigation, independent oversight. If I find evidence of deliberate falsification, he'll experience the same accommodations he provided his prisoners while awaiting trial." Vex opened his mouth to protest, but The commander was already moving, flanked by 2 guards who appeared from the corridor. They escorted him out with the same efficiency they'd shown with everything else, leaving a hollow silence behind. The Queen turned to Kes, and, for the first time, her expression held something approaching warmth. Not much, but enough. "You have my apology, Kes. It is inadequate, but it is sincere. You will remain under medical care until Dr. Webb certifies you as recovered. After that, we will discuss reparations and your future, including whether you wish to remain within our territory or require assistance returning to your people." "I don't have people anymore," Kes said quietly. "They died when my ship was destroyed." The Queen's expression shuddered. "Then we will discuss alternatives. For now, heal. Dr. Webb, you have full authority to ensure her recovery. Anyone who interferes answers to me personally." She left as dramatically as she arrived, taking the heavy tension with her. Marcus blew out a breath and turned to Kes with something approaching a genuine smile. "Well, I think that went about as well as we could have hoped." Kes managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. One of the medical staff rushed over with water, which she sipped gratefully. When she could speak again, she looked at Marcus with an emotion she couldn't quite name. "Thank you," she said. "I know that's not enough, but it's plenty." Marcus checked one of her monitors, made a minor adjustment. "Now get some rest. You've got a long recovery ahead, and knowing the Queen's reputation, she'll want regular updates on your progress. Better to give her good news." As exhaustion pulled Kes towards sleep, she heard Marcus speaking quietly with the medical staff, arranging schedules and treatment plans. His voice was the last thing she registered before unconsciousness claimed her, steady, professional, and somehow comforting. For the first time in 8 months, she slept without chains. Recovery was neither quick nor easy. Kes's body had adapted to starvation, and reintroducing proper nutrition triggered complications Marcus had warned about. She spent 3 days unable to keep food down, her stomach cramping so badly she couldn't sleep. The medical staff rotated through patient and professional, but it was Marcus who stayed through the worst of it, monitoring her vitals and adjusting treatments. "Tell me about Earth," Kes said one night when the nausea had temporarily subsided. "You mentioned a daughter." Marcus looked up from his data pad, surprise flickering across his tired features. "Trying to distract yourself from feeling like death? Is it working? Fair enough." He leaned back in his chair. "Her name's Sarah. She's 17, brilliant, stubborn as hell. Wants to be a xenobiologist like her old man, though I keep telling her to pick something safer. Will she listen? Not a chance." His smile held equal parts pride and worry. "She's got her mother's determination. Nothing stops her once she decides on something." "Where is her mother?" The smile faded. "She died. Ship accident. Sarah was 9. He was quiet for a moment. "That's actually why I took this posting. Needed to get away from Earth for a while. Stopped seeing her everywhere. Probably bad parenting, leaving Sarah with her grandparents while I run off to alien space, but you're trying," Kes interrupted. "That matters. Does it? Because right now, she thinks her dad's off doing something heroic. The reality is I'm just running from ghosts." Kes studied him in the dim room lighting. "You saved my life. Challenged a queen. Faced down an administrator powerful enough to have people imprisoned on manufactured charges. That sounds pretty heroic to me." Marcus laughed, a short bitter sound. "I did my job. Basic human decency isn't heroism. It is when no one else bothers." That killed the conversation for a while. Marcus returned to his data pad, but Kes saw the way his expression had shifted. Maybe she'd given him something to think about. Maybe not. Either way, the silence felt less empty than before. Days blurred together. Kessa's condition improved incrementally. First she could sit up without dizziness, then walk to the bathroom without assistance, then keep down solid food. Marcus reduced his constant presence to regular check-ins, trusting the medical staff to handle routine care. But he always came for the evening assessment, staying longer than strictly necessary. It was during one of these visits, 2 weeks into her recovery, that the Queen returned. She arrived without fanfare, dismissing the guards outside and entering alone. Marcus stood immediately, but the Queen waved him back down. "At ease, Doctor. This is a personal visit, not an official one." She turned to Kess. "How are you feeling?" "Better, Your Majesty. Dr. Webb's treatment has been effective." "Good." The Queen pulled up a chair, moving it with her own hands rather than having someone do it for her. The gesture felt significant somehow. "I wanted to discuss your situation personally. The investigation into Administrator Vex has revealed extensive corruption. You were far from his only victim, though your case was among the worst." Kess felt her chest tighten. "How many others?" 11 we've identified so far. 3 died in custody before we could intervene." The Queen's expression remained controlled, but Kess saw fury banked behind her eyes. "Vex will face trial for their deaths, as will the guards who carried out his orders without question. Even the ones who were just following protocol? There is no just following protocol when protocol violates fundamental rights." The Queen leaned forward slightly. "I want to be clear, Kess. What happened to you represents a systemic failure, not just of one corrupt administrator, but of a system that allowed him to operate unchecked. I intend to reform that system. But first, I need to make amends where possible." She produced a data tablet, setting it on the medical table within Kess's reach. "I've had my legal advisors prepare several options for reparations. Financial compensation, of course. Medical care for as long as you require it. Citizenship, if you want it, with full rights and protections. Housing, education, employment assistance. And if you prefer to leave our territory, I'll provide a ship and supplies to get you wherever you wish to go." Kess stared at the tablet without touching it. "Why?" "You've already admitted fault," prosecuted the guilty. "You don't owe me more than that. I owe you 8 months of your life I can never return." The Queen's voice carried a weight that made even Marcus look up from his own tablet. "I owe you the dignity that should have been yours from the beginning. And, frankly, I owe myself the chance to prove that my justice system can do better than this." "Self-interest, then," Kess said, but without bitterness. "Partially. Also guilt. And a genuine desire to see you recover, not just physically but in every sense." The Queen stood. "You don't need to decide immediately. Take time, review the options. Dr. Webb can answer questions about the practical aspects, and my legal team is available if you need clarification." She moved toward the door, then paused. "One more thing. Your ship's logs, the ones that survived the attack. We recovered them from the wreckage. They corroborate everything you said. Your crew tried to surrender. The attacking vessel ignored all hails. You defended yourself against what you reasonably perceived as a lethal threat." She turned back to face Kess fully. "You were a victim twice over, once by those attackers, once by us. I cannot fix the first, but I will spend however long it takes to fix the second." After she left, Marcus whistled softly. "Well, that was unexpected." "What part?" "All of it. The Queen doesn't do personal visits. Doesn't explain herself. Doesn't show vulnerability." He set his tablet aside. "I think you made an impression. Or she's trying to avoid a diplomatic incident. Maybe. But I've worked with enough politicians to know the difference between damage control and genuine remorse. That was genuine." He stood, checking her vitals one more time. You should rest. Tomorrow we're going to try actual physical therapy. Get those muscles working again properly. Kes nodded, but her attention remained on the tablet the Queen had left behind. Options. Choices. Things she'd thought lost forever. The weight of them felt both liberating and terrifying. That night, she dreamed of her crew for the first time since the attack. They stood on the bridge of their ship, laughing at something the pilot had said. Kes tried to warn them, tried to scream that danger was coming, but no sound emerged. She could only watch as the first impact tore through their shields, as the hull breached, as the ones she'd called friends died in vacuum and fire. She woke gasping, the medical monitor shrieking alerts. Marcus burst through the door, moving with practiced speed, while the medical staff rushed in behind him. Heart rates elevated, but stabilizing. It's okay, Kes. You're safe. You're in medical. Nothing's hurting you. His voice cut through the panic, steady and sure. Focus on my voice. Match your breathing to mine. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Kes followed his instructions, her racing heart gradually slowing. The monitors quieted. The medical staff hovered nearby, ready to intervene, but giving Marcus space to work. Nightmare? Marcus asked when she could speak again. Memory. Same thing, maybe. Trauma doesn't process on a convenient schedule. He adjusted her pillows, giving her something to focus on besides the fading images. Want to talk about it? They died. My crew. I couldn't save them. That wasn't your fault. I survived. That feels like fault enough. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, after my wife died, I spent a year wondering why I wasn't on that ship with her. Why I'd stayed home that one time instead of joining her on the supply run. I had 1,000 reasons. Work, Sarah needed me, I was tired. All of them felt like excuses. He met her eyes. It took my daughter asking if I wished I'd died with her mom to realize that survivor's guilt was making me useless to the people who still needed me. What did you tell her? The truth. That I was glad I survived, because otherwise I couldn't be there for her. That surviving doesn't dishonor the dead, wasting that survival does. He stood. Your crew didn't die so you could spend the rest of your life in a cell, literal or psychological. They died because someone made a terrible decision. The best way to honor them is to live well despite that. The word settled over Kes like a weight and a relief simultaneously. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Marcus seemed to understand. He stayed until she fell asleep again, his presence an anchor against the dark. Physical therapy proved more challenging than Kes expected. Her muscles had atrophied significantly, and exercises that should have been simple left her shaking with exhaustion. The therapist, a patient woman named Rel, pushed her gently but consistently. You're doing better than most, Rel said during one particularly brutal session. Most people in your situation don't have the mental fortitude to push through the discomfort. Most people in my situation died, Kes said bluntly. Rel didn't flinch. Yes, they did. Which means you owe it to them to make the most of your survival. It was almost exactly what Marcus had said, but coming from someone else, it hit differently. Kes found herself pushing harder, working through the pain, determined to prove that her survival meant something. 3 weeks into recovery, Marcus declared her stable enough for limited freedom. She could leave the medical wing, accompanied by a guard for safety rather than constraint. Her first destination was the facility's observation deck, a place Marcus had mentioned in passing. The view stole her breath. The station orbited a gas giant, its swirling clouds illuminated by a distant star. Moons dotted the space around them, some cratered and dead, others showing signs of terraforming. Traffic moved in organized streams, cargo haulers, passenger ships, patrol craft maintaining order. Beautiful, isn't it? Kes turned to find the queen standing nearby, her ceremonial armor replaced by simpler clothing that nonetheless carried unmistakable authority. The guards who'd accompanied Kes had vanished, leaving them alone. I didn't expect to see you here, Your Majesty. I come here when I need perspective. To remember that my decisions affect millions of lives across dozens of worlds. She moved to stand beside Kes at the window. Have you reviewed the reparation options? I have. I'm still deciding. Take your time. Though I admit, I hope you'll consider staying. We could use someone with your perspective in our reformed justice system. Someone who's experienced both sides of it. Kes laughed, a startled sound. You want me to work for you? I want you to help ensure no one else experiences what you did. There's a difference. The queen's reflection in the window showed unusual vulnerability. I've been queen for 30 years. I thought I understood my systems, my people, my responsibilities. You show me I was blind to suffering happening in my own facilities. That's unforgivable. But perhaps it can be fixed. And if I say no? If I take a ship and leave? Then I'll wish you well and ensure you have everything you need for your journey. The queen turned from the window. But I think you're someone who needs purpose, Kes. Someone who can't just drift. Your crew died fighting. Honor that by continuing to fight, in whatever way suits you. She left before Kes could formulate a response. Through the window, the gas giant continued its eternal rotation, indifferent to the small dramas playing out in its orbit. Kes wondered what her crew would advise. The pilot would probably tell her to take the ship and run. The engineer would calculate the odds of success for each option. The captain would ask what Kes wanted, deep down beneath the trauma and fear. The problem was, Kes didn't know. She'd spent so long just surviving that wanting felt like a luxury she'd forgotten how to afford. Marcus found her there an hour later, standing still as stone before the window. He didn't speak immediately, just came to stand beside her, offering silent companionship. Finally, Kes broke the silence. The queen offered me a job. I heard. What are you thinking? That it's insane. That I'm not qualified. That accepting would mean staying in the place that hurt me. She paused. Also that she might be right about needing purpose. For what it's worth, I think you'd be brilliant at it. You've got first-hand experience and enough rage to fuel real change. Plus, you're stubborn enough to stand up to people like Vex. Marcus checked his tablet habitually. But you're also still recovering. Don't make major life decisions while your brain chemistry is still stabilizing. Practical as always. Someone has to be. He smiled. Come on. Rel says you're cleared for the next exercise tier. Time to find out if you can handle stairs. The stairs nearly killed her. By the time Kes reached the top of the first flight, her legs shook so badly Rel had to catch her. But she made it. And the next day, she made it again faster. Small victories built on each other, each one proving she was more than what the cell had tried to make her. Visitors started arriving as word spread of her recovery. Some were officials, offering formal apologies on behalf of various departments. Others were former prisoners, people Vex had targeted, who wanted to meet the person whose case had triggered the investigation that freed them. Kes found these meetings exhausting but necessary. Their stories echoed hers, assumptions made, questions never asked, suffering ignored. One visitor surprised her more than the others. The commander, the guard who'd overseen her cell, appeared one evening, still in full armor, but with his helmet tucked under his arm. I won't take much of your time, he said without preamble. I wanted to apologize personally. I followed protocol without questioning whether that protocol was just. That failure is mine to carry. Kes studied him. Up close, without the helmet, he looked older than she'd expected. Tired. You were following orders. A reason, not an excuse. I've served the Queen for 20 years. I should have known better. He set something on her medical table, a small data chip. Security logs from your detention. Unedited. I thought you might want them, or might want them destroyed. Your choice. Why give them to me? Because you earn the right to decide what happens to your own story. He inclined his head, a gesture of respect. I've requested reassignment. Pending the investigation's outcome, I'll likely face discipline. But whatever happens, I wanted you to know that I see my mistake. I saw it the moment Dr. Webb forced me to actually look at you as a person. He left before Kes could respond. She stared at the data chip for a long time before asking Marcus to help her review it. The logs were brutal, every moment of her imprisonment recorded in clinical detail. The time she'd cried, the time she'd raged against the chains, the long stretches where she'd simply existed, too broken to do even that. Why would he give me this? Kes asked, her voice hollow. Accountability, maybe. Or penance. Marcus handed her a glass of water. Do you want to keep it? Kes thought about it. About the weight of carrying that evidence versus the weight of destroying it. Finally, she shook her head. Make a copy for the investigation. Then, delete the original. I don't need to relive this. You sure? I survived it. That's enough. Marcus made the copy, then wiped the chip clean with professional efficiency. When he handed it back, it was just empty storage, ready for new data. New memories. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of them. 6 weeks into recovery, the Queen summoned Kes to the throne room. It was Kes's first time in the formal heart of the station, and the grandeur was overwhelming. The room soared upward, its ceiling lost in shadow despite the bright lighting. Banners representing different worlds hung from the walls, while the throne itself sat on a raised platform, imposing but not ostentatious. The Queen sat in casual dress, making the formal setting feel oddly intimate. She gestured for Kes to approach, dismissing the guards with a wave. Thank you for coming. I wanted to give you an update on the investigation and to make a request. The Queen stood, descending from the platform to meet Kes on level ground. Administrator Vex will stand trial next month. 37 charges, including wrongful imprisonment, falsification of records, and negligent homicide for the 3 who died in custody. The evidence is overwhelming. He'll spend the rest of his life imprisoned under the same conditions he imposed on others. That's something, Kes said carefully. It's justice. Not the same as making things right, but a start. The Queen pulled out a data pad. I've also begun implementing reforms. New oversight for prisoner classification. Mandatory reviews every 30 days. External auditors with access to all facilities. And a new position, Director of Justice Integrity, reporting directly to me, with authority to investigate any detention they deem questionable. Kes saw where this was going. You want me to take that position? I want someone who understands the cost of systemic failure. Someone who won't be swayed by politics or tradition. Someone stubborn enough to challenge me if necessary. The Queen met her eyes. I want you, Kes. But only if you want this. I'm not qualified. I don't know your laws, your precedents you'll learn. And you'll have staff, experts to handle the technical details. What you bring is something they can't learn, perspective from the bottom of the system looking up. The Queen's expression softened slightly. I won't pressure you, but I will say that in the 6 weeks since Dr. Webb challenged me in that cell, you've become something of a symbol. The prisoner who survived. The injustice that sparked reform. People are watching to see what happens next. No pressure, though, Kes said dryly. The Queen smiled. Perhaps some pressure. Is that so wrong? You have a chance to turn your suffering into something meaningful, to ensure others don't experience what you did. Not everyone gets that opportunity. Kes thought about her crew. About the pilot who'd always push for fairness, even when it inconvenienced them. About the captain who'd believed that survival meant nothing without purpose. About Marcus's words regarding survivors' guilt and honoring the dead through living well. "I'll do it," she heard herself say. "On one condition." "Name it." "Dr. Webb gets a permanent position here. Medical oversight for detention facilities. Someone has to make sure your reforms actually stick." The Queen's smile widened. Already done. He accepted this morning. Apparently, his daughter told him to stop running from ghosts and start making new memories. The weight on Kes's chest eased slightly. Purpose. Direction. A way forward that honored where she'd been without being defined by it. "Then yes, Your Majesty. I accept." The Queen extended her hand, and Kes took it, their grips firm and equal. "Welcome to the most frustrating job you'll ever have. I look forward to the arguments we'll inevitably have about jurisdiction and authority. I look forward to winning them," Kes replied. The Queen laughed, a genuine sound that echoed through the empty throne room. "I believe you will. Now come. We have approximately 9,000 items of bureaucracy to handle before you can officially start. I recommend stimulants." As Kes followed the Queen toward the administrative offices, she caught her reflection in one of the polished pillars. The woman looking back was still too thin, still carrying shadows under her eyes. But she stood straight, walked without hesitation, met her own gaze without flinching. She looked like someone who had survived. More importantly, she looked like someone ready to live.